Danny Stutsman will lead a defensive resurgence in 2023. We'll talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your 2023 goals. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on 94.7 The Ref in Norman. And Josh, coming out of the Newcomer Media Day, Brent Venables had some really positive things to say about Danny Stutsman, after his first season starting for the Oklahoma Sooners. And I mean, really, it seems like he's kind of that leader on the defense now. Brent Venables called him Oklahoma's best player in the Cheez-It Bowl. So I'm kind of buying all the Danny Stutsman stock at this point in time. Had a really strong first year as a starter at linebacker. Now is going to be relied upon to be a leader for that defense. And I really think that he's still an ascending player.
Here was the quote, if you missed it, from Brent Venables. Quote, "Danny was outstanding in our bowl game. I think it was quite obvious. He's the best player in our defense. And I say that because I'm not worried about Danny, getting full of himself. But I'm also going to recognize a guy that I think we can build a defense around. And he's got a lot to improve at too, physically, fundamentally, understanding. But he's a guy that's been putting in the work, and he's fanatical about putting in work and improving. Got a great sense of desperation," end quote. I'm with you. That's some pretty hefty praise from the head coach, who obviously has the track record, John, of receiving terrific linebacker play. So he knows when he's got the goods in a linebacker. And it seems like Brent Venables feels like, okay, he was public about the fact that it took 8 to 10 weeks for Danny Stutsman to ask for the playbook last spring. But remember when we had podcast on the Prairie Gate, Brent Venables was the first to say, wait a second here, hold up. Danny Stutsman is doing some really, really nice things for this team. So he's clearly, Venables, very, very high on, what Danny Stutsman has already done, what he already means to this defense, and then obviously where he thinks Stutsman can go.
And to be real too, they need him to be that guy. Like they need him to ascend to an elite level at the position, because you don't really have much else. The rest of your linebacker core is 2022 and 2023 signees and Shane Witter. Like that's your linebacker group as of right now. Deshaun McCullough coming in. If he's your cheetah, then he kind of factors into that as well. But the rest of it, I mean, it's a lot of guys with a lot of potential, but you don't have any experience really. I mean, Jaren Kanak is your most experienced linebacker. I mean, Deshaun McCullough played edge last year, so he's going to be making a move if he ends up at cheetah. So you're looking at Danny Stutsman and Jaren Kanak as your most experienced players, and you feel good about what you got in Stutsman. Now you need him to kind of take his game to the next level and really continue on that trajectory. And I think he did play well down the stretch of the season, but it's hard when you're playing 90 to 100 snaps in a game to maintain that same level of play in the fourth quarter that you had in the first quarter. And I think that's what we saw in the West Virginia game. And I think that's what we saw for both Stutsman and Agwebu and White in the Texas Tech game too, is just they faded down the stretch because they were playing so many snaps. Only 2 players on defense in all of the FBS played more snaps than Danny Stutsman, and those 2 players were safeties. No linebacker played more snaps than Danny Stutsman did last year. And I mean, I think he did an admirable job when they didn't have any other answers. Again, this was a defense that had a hard time getting off the field. Now, he was part of that defense that had a hard time getting off the field. But again, just his first season as a starter. And I really think that the relationship that he has with Brent Venables allows Venables to say things like, hey, he wasn't mature enough last offseason. And then coming into this offseason saying he's our best player, or one of Yeah, I mean, he basically said he's our best player. And I think you can probably see the difference in just the way kind of he operates in the program and the way the program operates with him. And like, I don't know if he's the guy doing all those interviews with the newcomers that you saw on the OU social media accounts, if he's not taking everything else seriously, if that makes sense. Yeah, he's a jokester. He's got a fun personality, but if he's not doing all the other little things right, do you think Brent Venables is signing off on him doing, these newcomer interviews with the media? Maybe not. But to me, that's just a sign that he's doing everything else right.
And this might be too high of a bar to hold somebody to, but for what it's worth, Danny Stutsman last season, 6 games with double-figure tackles. And I know we've done this demonstration or had this conversation before where the total tackles tally is sometimes maybe a little misleading, right? But just in a general sense, 6 games with double-figure tackles tells you, tells me, tells all of us something's going right with Danny Stutsman. I mean, that much is clear. There's some serious production there. 2 games last season with multiple tackles for loss. 4 TFLs versus Kent State, and then a pair of TFLs versus Kansas. He did have 1.5 versus Texas, and he had 1 versus Florida State. Again, this is where I say maybe that's trying to raise the bar a little bit too much. If a linebacker's coming downhill and stopping somebody, rush of 2, gain of 1, great, right? But I would like to see maybe that TFL number in that regard elevated just a little bit for Danny Stutsman to take that next step forward, just that one little bit quicker bit of recognition for Danny Stutsman. But I read the comments just like you did, John. I mean, to me, that's Brent Venables saying this is the best player on our defense, and I expect him to be the best player on our defense.
So you're asking about kind of efficiency, tackling efficiency. And I think this is a really interesting thing that Pro Football Focus does with their stops statistic. It's one where they basically, a stop for them is considered a play in which the defense creates a loss for the offense, not necessarily a loss of yards, but it's an inefficient play. So on first down, if you don't gain 40% of the necessary yards to get a first down, then that's considered a loss for the offense. The player gets a stop. On second down, I think it's 60% of the yards. And then on third and fourth down, has to be 100% of the necessary yards to gain to get a first down. And Danny Stutsman, I mean, he led the Sooners in stops going away. He had 54 stops. The next best was David Agwebu with 37. If we want to look at this just on the Big 12 scene, give me 1 second to pull it up, but I bet he's pretty good on that front as well, because I mean, the dude was around the football. And I think that's one thing that really stood out about Brent Venables' defense this year is that, I mean, they flew to the football and they tried to get as many tacklers to the ball carrier as they possibly could. Amongst linebackers in the Big 12, Danny Stutsman was number 1 in the conference with stops. So yes, I mean, we talk about how the tackling number can be a bit misleading. The stop number is not at all misleading. That means he's creating plays that aren't winning plays for the opposing offense. He's getting the ball carrier down before they're gaining efficient yards. Again, number 1 amongst linebackers in the Big 12 in stops. And then amongst any position, it looks like for the Big 12, he was number 1. We can just go by, in the nation. Let's see where he's at. He was number 12 in the nation among all defenders at the FBS level in stops. So yes, tackles can be misleading, but I think the stop number is the one that really shows that this is a dude that's making efficient plays for the Oklahoma Sooners defense. You want that missed tackles number to drop a little bit, that missed tackle percentage to drop. He was like 14%. But again, I think that is attributable to the number of plays that he played for the Oklahoma Sooners defense. You get some better depth, which Brent Venables was very adamant about saying that the depth is much better at the linebacker position this year than it was a year ago. You get better depth. You get guys that you can, like, if you got Kobe McKenzie that can come in and play the will and give you 4 or 5 series, maybe 3 series to spell Danny Stutsman, man, that's so much better. Then it gives you an opportunity to keep Danny Stutsman fresh for the fourth quarter when you need somebody to come on the field and you got to have a play then you got Danny Stutsman at his freshest to make that play. And again, another year with Schmitty in the strength and conditioning program is also going to make him better conditioned to be able to sustain a high level of play through 4 quarters. So I think everything is really working in the favor of Stutsman. I also think, Jordan Kelly, Isaiah Coe ascending into into being starters. I think that's really going to benefit this defense as well, because those two dudes, they're both really good kind of two-way players, both really good against the run and can generate some pass rush. And so they're going to make things a little bit easier for the linebackers, in my opinion, than maybe like a Jalen Redmond, who was a really good pass rusher, but I felt like he wasn't as good of a run defender as Oklahoma needed last year. So again, buying all the Danny Stutsman stock, I think he's going to be a phenomenal player. And I also like that you get a guy with some speed next to him, like a Jaren Kanak, playing the other linebacker spot. And I really think that matches up very well, as opposed to having two like big, strong guys that they had in Stutsman and Ugwebu last year. Not that they're bad players, but it's nice to have a little bit of athletic diversity, if that makes sense, at the linebacker position.
Sure. And if that light bulb has fully clicked on for Jaren Kanak, we've seen the athletic ability that he has. So all of a sudden you start thinking about pairing that opposite Danny Stutsman. And, oh, by the way, you got a Deshaun McCullough that we'll see where he's going to factor into all of this. It sounds like the early return on that question is that they're looking at Cheetah for him. I still kind of look at McCullough and say, okay, this is someone that, to me, I don't know is necessarily going to be locked into any one thing. I think that's trying to figure out right now throughout the spring and into obviously the fall next season. Okay, would it work long-term at Cheetah? Because this is one of our best football players. And simply put, we got to find a way on this defense to get McCullough on the field. And if it works at Cheetah, then great. It works at Cheetah, right? Alongside, and then you're talking about maybe having the best set of linebackers. And, I don't know about McCullough's coverage skills, but, some guys that can cover a little bit too. We might have the best collection in the Big 12 if that light bulb clicks on for Jaren Kanak, and if it works for McCullough at the Cheetah, where you can, basically have a 3 linebacker set, obviously, when you want to there. We have recruiting news that we got to hit out there. We got recruiting news as well. The, one thing just real quick before we move on, the numbers, one of them that jumped out to me when you start talking about the stops is that's encouraging. To me, that's encouraging. It tells me that Danny Stutsman, for the most part, is doing what he's being asked to do. It's just Oklahoma collectively, John, that third down percentage defense number of 41% that they allowed last season. That's not just Danny Stutsman specific, right? I mean, that's just Oklahoma defensively. To me, that's the big number. If they can improve that, they're going to be light years better. They were 88th nationally in that department. But again, we've got recruiting news to talk to you about, but not before I tell you that, hey, small business owners, hiring managers, you know that you want success in 2023 and success in 2023. It all depends on the team members that you surround yourself with. That's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, the values, and the experience to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs, it helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. They go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, your company, and their 875 million member profiles to post your job in front of the most qualified candidates. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So check them out. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The recruiting front. We have nothing, I don't think, in the way of a commitment, but positive news, perhaps.
Yeah, the Oklahoma Sooners received their second prediction for 2024 safety, Mykell Mykell, where'd he go? Mykell Patterson-McDonald. My goodness. Sorry, everybody. Been a long day. Mykell Patterson-McDonald, a 2024, he's an unrated safety prospect right now out of Westmoore High School in Moore, Oklahoma, and very intriguing prospect. According to our guy, Parker Thune, good buddy of David Stone. So just kind of an intriguing little connection there. But you look at the dude's huddle highlights, And this is a guy that's going to be, I think he's going to be a 4-star when it's all said and done. He's a tenacious player, gets after the football, gets after the ball carrier, is not afraid. He plays physical. You can play him at safety. You can play him in nickel. You can play him some outside corner, depending on the matchup. I really like this dude's game, and I really think he's going to be a guy that Brent Venables really, really wants to have on his defense, regardless of what happens maybe with David Stone. But he just seems like a guy that you can help kind of add a little bit of an edge to your secondary. Someone who maybe like a Reggie Pearson from Texas Tech can come in and provide that kind of that nastiness that you want in the secondary a little bit. I think he's a guy that brings that to the table. So very intriguing prospect, even though you don't see him rated with any, 3 or 4 stars really anywhere. But second prediction came through Parker Thune of OU Insider at 247 Sports, dropped a crystal ball back, late January, early February. Josh McQuistion of Sooner Scoop at Rivals gave a future cast for this kid. So a lot trending positively for the Oklahoma Sooners. And big if there is in some way a package deal between him and David Stone, you got to like what this potentially means for Stone. But again, the biggest of ifs on that front.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think the writing is on the wall on that, just because I look at the Mykell Patterson-McDonald offer sheet, and it's from Oklahoma. It's from Michigan State. It's from Oklahoma. It's from Michigan State. So, and he's also got offers from Tulsa and UNLV, but that tells me that the 2 perceived front runners for Mr. Stone understand that this could be an important domino to fall in that recruitment as well. No shade to obviously any of Mykell Patterson-McDonald's own abilities as a talented safety over at Westmoore. But again, I think that the recruiting writing is on the wall for you there. Michigan State, I don't think would know much about this unrated kid if not for his relationship with Mr. Stone.
Hey, and I'm not going to, and big shout out to David Stone. Like, you got a buddy who's not being properly evaluated or recruited yet, and you want to get him a little love. Like, dude, what? I'm all for that. Like, give your guy as much opportunity as you can. And I really do think that this kid's got the 4-star talent. I mean, I really do. I don't know what the talent level and the level of competition is like for Westmoore, but I imagine it's pretty good, considering the more Norman, Oklahoma City kind of greater metropolitan area. I feel like it's got to be pretty good. So, I mean, he stands out, from what you see. So I'm intrigued. I really am intrigued. If the David Stone connection wasn't there and somebody showed me his film, I'd be intrigued anyway, because I just think he's got that kind of ability that you want to have at the back end of your defense, like a dude that gives no F's and he's just going to come up and hit you. Like, that's the kind of guy you want in your secondary, whether it's at safety, especially at nickel corner. Like, you want some dudes that just feel some way about themselves with a confidence level playing in the nickel. And I really think this is one of those kids that's got that kind of like, you're not going to beat me. I'm going to dominate every snap. You're not getting by me. And if you do somehow get the ball thrown at you, you're going to feel that I'm there when it comes your way. So yeah, man, give me some, give me some McDonald, man. Give me this kid out of Westmoore. I'm all for it.
Just generally speaking, this 2024 class for Oklahoma, we're waiting on the first name to drop, right? And when that happens, we could start seeing names in a flurry. Generally speaking for you, what's sort of your feelings on out of the spring game? Are you expecting multiple commitments for Oklahoma? The summertime last year was when things really started simmering to a boil for OU. So that's kind of, I think, the timeline that I'm targeting for things to heat up would be just, again, the summertime for OU, just based on what we went through a recruiting cycle ago. But how do you feel about this? Are you in any way concerned that Oklahoma does not yet have a commit?
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially after the way last year went, I think it was like by June, you only maybe had 4 or 5 commits. And the only ones really of significance were Jackson Arnold. You had Josh Bates, and everybody really liked what they saw in Josh Bates, but it seemed like okay, you haven't really started hitting on the 4 stars. Remember all the think pieces coming out about Oklahoma's recruiting being in trouble, and June, July, August, all those think pieces went up in flames. I mean, they got cold taked by themselves. And so I'm of the mind, like, if we're sitting here in July and we haven't started seeing the dominoes, like the Aaron Flowers, the Michael Hawkinses, the Williams and Wineries, like, now that's going to be a tough one, but I mean, it seems like the writing's on the wall for like Bryant Wesco and Aaron Flowers, and, Parker's still feeling fairly positive about Michael Hawkins. If you don't start seeing some of those names trending your way, or at least landing with an Oklahoma commitment, then I'll be somewhat surprised, but not concerned. It's going to take a lot at this point for me to be concerned. And I feel like I'd have to be in August or September without, a top 10, top 15 recruiting class. If we get to August and it's not a top 15 class, I'll be a little bit, okay, what's going on? Is this still a David Stone, shoe that we're waiting to see drop? That's kind of where I would land, but I feel comfortable. I feel really confident that Oklahoma and his staff are going to put together another really, really good class.
Yeah, I think we just have such faith in what Brent Venables and his staff, their recruiting chops, Bates, everybody, what they can get accomplished, that you just don't panic a whole bunch until there's reason to panic. I will say, though, some of the names that you're talking about there, if, for example, a David Stone has committed to Michigan State, and if, for example, a Winery has committed to Missouri, and those two guys are off the board, right? Because nobody's really off the board until the national letters of intent come in. But if those have happened, then okay, whenever that date would be, I think you would see some widespread panic among Oklahoma fans about, hey, what the heck's going wrong with this class? But until that day happens, and let's hope that day doesn't come at all. Let's hope it's the opposite. And we're talking about Oklahoma landing a pair more of 5-star guys up front. And if that happens, then people are going to be really, really excited. And, until they make any sort of a decision, I think because of what this staff has done in this 2023 class, you have the benefit of the doubt now.
Yeah, until National Signing Day, the early signing period or the signing day, I'm not going to count Oklahoma out of any of their targeted, recruitments. And up until David Stone signs, up until Williams and Winery signs, Michael Hawkins signs, like, I'm going to not count them out completely because of what we saw with Peyton Bowen, like swooping in at the last second and pulling off a really incredible upset. So recruiting is never going to stop. And we won't know for sure. But I really do feel like with Venables classes, we're going to have a really good idea of what this group looks like by mid to late summer. And yeah, did they have a couple guys flip out of their recruiting class last year? Yeah. You had, Ashton Cozart, you had Colton Vasek, you had Anthony Evans, but there was a lot of, extenuating circumstances with those guys. Cozart, a Pacific Northwest guy, Colton Vasek, Texas legacy. It was kind of a shock that they got him in the first place. And then Anthony Evans, his mom is a Georgia fan. He wanted to play for his mom's favorite team. So again, extenuating circumstances. I think more often than not, the guys that Oklahoma gets committed by August or so are going to be sticking with Oklahoma because that's just the way Brent Venables is going to operate. He doesn't want these guys committing too fast, too soon, and then flipping those commitments. So I think that's just going to bode well for the Sooners. All right, we got some hot topics, Sooners sports off the gridiron to discuss here after I talk to y'all about Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. Easy to eat, 100% covered in chocolate. It tastes great. It's great for you. Anywhere from 130 to 170 calories, 4 or 5 grams of sugar, 17, 18 grams of protein. You're not looking at a lot of sugar, which is fantastic. I know if you're looking for a snack, often it's easy to just go look for the cookie or go look for a candy bar. Well, Built Bar has got you covered with a well-balanced protein option that gives you the craving fix that you need, like gives you that sweet fix that you're looking for, and you're not paying for it with all of the fat, all the carbohydrates. You get a great protein bar that tastes great with great flavor options like the peanut butter brownie and the mint brownie, which are my personal favorite. Also great granola bars over there as well. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, get 15% off your next order over at built.com. So Josh, I mean, a very interesting weekend for the Oklahoma Sooners. I mean, we can start softball, we can start basketball. I mean, just so many things happening this weekend with the Sooners. Where would you like to start?
Let's just get the disappointment of softball out of the way.
Yeah.
Number one, Oklahoma, uncharacteristically, loses to Baylor. They did have the tying run on third base with 2 outs in the 6th inning after cutting a 4-1 deficit down to what was the eventual final 4-3. But obviously, by now the final tally being 4-3, Oklahoma didn't plate that runner, and they didn't plate another one in the 7th either. So Baylor came away with a surprising win over number one Oklahoma. It's a huge win, obviously, for the Bears for obviously their seeding case whenever that point in time comes. I'm shocked. I'll raise my hand and say, look, I was right here. Ringleader of the band saying that I thought that this team would very much challenge to potentially go undefeated and, late into the calendar year, have a chance to do that. But obviously, egg on the face, that didn't happen. Jordy Ball, surprisingly, 3-run bomb. And that those kind of things, that's tough to overcome, John. Ultimately, look, the undefeated season, silly. It doesn't matter. Oklahoma's going for a three-peat. This doesn't affect that really in any way, shape, or form. Honestly, it's probably more positive than it is negative in the sense that I'm looking at a quote right here from Patty Gasso, quote, "What just happened is extremely valuable. What's valuable is the response, the rebound, and the extra work that's going to be put in to make us better," end quote.
Yeah, it's a disappointing loss. And if you're Oklahoma, you don't expect to lose. And so maybe this helps get the monkey off the back a little bit, maybe helps, lighten up things for a lot of them, especially the new ones like the Sydney Sanders, Alina Torres, who aren't really hitting great yet. They haven't really found their stroke in the 2022 season. Tiara Jennings, expected to kind of be the Jocelyn Allo replacement, hasn't really found her power stroke just yet. Finally got her first home run of the season against Army, I believe. But yeah, they just haven't really found it. Your best hitters so far have been Jocelyn Erickson, the true freshman, Alyssa Brito, who had transferred from Oregon last year. Those have been kind of your two most consistent. Jada Coleman leading off has been really consistent, but you haven't really gotten consistency. Haley Lee is another one that's been really good. But you're missing out on, Tiara Jennings. Once her bat wakes up, Sydney Sanders, once her bat wakes up, this thing is going to be humming. And I think it's only a matter of time before those two really start finding their stride. And then, yeah, for Ball, sometimes you just leave one hanging and you get beat. A lot of times she's able to get away with some of that stuff because of just the dynamic ability that she has with her other pitches, that if she misses, kind of, it's a surprise. And even for the hitter a little bit, and they're not able to fully get a hold of it. But I mean, the hitter made a great swing on it and just put it out. And that's just the way that goes. But I mean, she was kind of getting hit around the yard for a lot of the day and was able to escape a few different jams. But I don't have any concerns long-term about this Oklahoma Sooners softball team. I think they're going to be just fine. Again, once Tiara Jennings really starts finding her stride, and Sydney Sanders, I mean, you don't go from hitting 400 as a true freshman with 21 home runs to batting just over 200 and struggling at the plate. You just don't do that. Now they're going to have several tests this coming weekend that are really going to put them to the test, but hopefully they're able to rebound and play a little bit looser. And then just go out there and have fun.
Not a picture perfect start, not a College World Series type start for Oklahoma baseball either. Won that first game versus Cal Baptist 5-2, and then proceeded to lose the series versus Cal Baptist after that. Obviously, 3-3 game late, and Oklahoma's relief doesn't hold up versus Cal Baptist, and so they lose the rubber match 6-3. So frustrating. 3-run 8th inning homer that the Lancers bounced out of the ballpark at L. Mitchell Park. So not ideal there. From negatives to a positive up in Allen Fieldhouse, I thought that this was a sneaky, difficult game for Oklahoma versus Kansas. John, you just look at the way the afternoon played out, and you look at the final score, and ultimately it was that. It was sneaky difficult. Not even sneaky difficult. The team knew that it was difficult. I guess for folks that naturally maybe weren't as in tune to the type of team that Kansas is, maybe you're a little bit surprised by the final, but all's well that ends well. Oklahoma goes up to Lawrence, wins their 6th straight. They take care of business versus KU 86-80, and now we're just inching closer to that showdown versus Texas.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game that when I was writing up, kind of preparing for or writing my last post game on women's basketball, that I remember thinking back to the last time they played Kansas and how they actually had a big first half deficit that they had to overcome in that game. And yeah, again, Kansas proved difficult again in this one on Sunday. Yeah, man, this team, they're just too good offensively to keep down for very long. Now, the test is going to come when they play Texas, because when they played Texas last time, the Longhorns, they stifled them defensively. And so that's going to be a huge, huge test for them, but they're in a good spot to come away with their first regular season Big 12 title since like 2009. So, big shout out to them. They're playing, phenomenal basketball right now. More positive news, Josh, the Oklahoma women's gymnastics team put up a really strong performance down at Fort Worth against Texas women's, picking up the win 198-195. I mean, it's Texas women's. They're not going to be able to compete with Oklahoma. I mean, it's just, this is like Oklahoma versus Kent State on the football field.
Yeah. Well, Coach KJ Kidler's got a juggernaut over there, obviously. Just gymnastics just continues to do great things. Oklahoma men's gymnastics, a thriller versus Nebraska, and Oklahoma able to register its 2nd straight score of 418 or better to edge number 3 Nebraska. So, man, the men's gymnastics team, a couple of huge wins here lately over Stanford and Nebraska. I mean, really, some would say their biggest competition ultimately when you get to fighting for it for a national championship. So, a huge win on the men's side as well. It's Jim U, baby. I mean, come on. Well, what else is new?
That's right. And then, lastly, we got to talk about the men's basketball loss at Texas in Austin. Man, it was very much reminiscent of what the team looked like before the Alabama win, just close losses, having a chance late, not able to, keep the offense rolling, went on a 7-minute stretch where they didn't hit a field goal, but I mean, hung in there and battled back. I mean, they were down a couple possessions late in the game with, a minute, 2 minutes left to play. And they found a way to tie the game on Grant Sherfield, 3-pointer that ties the game, sends it to overtime. In OT, they find themselves down big again, down by 7 at one point. And then again, under 2 minutes to play, under a minute and a half to play, they're down by 5 and they find a way to get at least one more chance to tie the game. Just wasn't able to get the shot to fall. So these last couple games against Kansas State and against Texas, I feel like, okay, we're turning a corner here. We're not getting blown out. We're not losing by 30 points or 23 points. We're playing tougher. Is it the result you're looking for? Not at all. You want to win these games, but you got to like the direction that it's heading as we close out the regular season.
I'm starting to buy stock into the idea that the team needed to hear Porter Moser get in front of the microphone and say he's not going anywhere. I really do, because, ever since that moment, it's been a totally different Oklahoma team. It's frustrating because it's moral victory city with OU. You're so desperate for wins coming down the home stretch here to give yourself any sort of a outside chance to get an at-large bid without going to win the Big 12 tournament. Now with each passing defeat, you've got to win the Big 12 tournament. And are we to that point yet? I mean, maybe not quite, but we're really, really close to that point. I thought, man, when Sherfield's shot went down, okay, wow, they might find a way to get this thing done in overtime, but just too good of a start to OT for the Longhorns. Oklahoma fought, man. They fought their tails off like crazy, but man, I would have liked to have seen them go for the game-winning 3 at the end of the game there instead of Jalen Hill charging inside, and then Godwin, got a good look, but had to really rush the thing because I think it left his fingertips with 0.4 of a second left on the clock. So he really had to get it away fast. So, man, hindsight being 2020, just get that ball to Sherfield, screen him, and let him try and shoot you to a win down in Austin. It would have been gigantic, but they're playing hard, man. I hate to be Mr. Moral Victory here, but it's kind of where we're at right now with this program is any sort of positives we can take coming down the home stretch or obviously into next season. That was a positive, though. It's a loss. I get that. That's frustrating. The team played its tail off, and there's been plenty of other instances we can't say that.
Yeah, you go on the road, you go to Austin, you're playing the number 6 team in the nation, and you lose by a bucket. Like, there's no shame in that at all, especially after you do have a stretch where you're not playing your best offensive basketball. You still have a chance to win. And I think there's you can take positives away from that, even though it's a loss. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially as a team that is unlikely to make the NCAA tournament. Now they're going to have a chance to really bolster their resume. They got 4 games left. They play Tech, who's kind of surging a little bit lately. And then you got number 19 Iowa State, number 12 Kansas State, and then number 22 TCU. And then who knows in the Big 12 tournament? Like if you can win some of these ranked games and then make a little bit of a run in the NCAA tournament, there's no telling what could happen. I don't think it's likely. I'm not sitting here telling you to buy tickets to the NCAA tournament or start, making your travel plans for the regionals or anything like that. But stranger things have happened. Teams get hot, and if you're shooting well, you can shoot yourself to a victory. So it's again, unlikely, but man, you just never know. So anything else, Josh, that we need to touch on before we get out of here tonight?
Not really, but I will say the 5th foul on Tanner Groves was an absolute travesty. Tanner, I'm sorry. The officials down in Austin should apologize to you. That was one of the worst calls, one of the biggest flops I've ever seen. But a nice win for the Longhorns.
Yeah, the flop horns. Anyway, sorry. That's a bad attempt at a
Texas floppers.
The Texas flop horns, the flop horn leg horns. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being part of the show. Make sure you're around for the live show on Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time, where we'll dig into all sorts of goodness and goodies. But until then, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer Sooner.